Hello and welcome to this mini tutorial on using the Muse. Today we'll be walking you through the basic steps of setting up the device and sharing some tips and tricks on collecting good quality EEG data with it. So you'll start by switching the Muse on, pressing and holding the start button will get the device ready for pairing, and you can just set it aside and get the software up and running. For that, you'll need to get the iPad and you'll have to make sure that Bluetooth is enabled in the settings. After that, you'll open the Peer app and go to the menu in the top left corner of the page to click Connect, which will pair the Muse with the iPad. Now it's time to prepare for putting the device onto the participant. If the participant has long hair, ask them to put it into a tight bun or a ponytail. Make sure that the hair from behind the ears is slicked back. If the participant has a fringe or any loose strands in the front, use clips to pin those bits back and ensure that there is no hair on the forehead. If the participant is wearing glasses and needs them to see the screen, ask them to briefly take the glasses off and explain that they can put the glasses back on once the device has been set up. Now you can put the Muse onto the participant. Start by placing earpieces behind the ears first, making sure that no hair gets trapped between the device and the ears. Then adjust the length of the front piece so that it's hugging the forehead tightly. It should be placed a bit closer to the hairline than the eyebrows, and again, there should be no hair between the Muse and the skin. Make sure that the central white dot is aligned with the midline of the face so that the frontal electrodes are positioned correctly. Now go back to the app and check signal quality. Each quadrant of the circle represents an electrode, and you want to make sure that all 4 quadrants are fully filled in with blue, meaning that all 4 electrodes are getting good quality signal. You might have to readjust the Muse if the signal quality is poor. Click Done in the top right corner of the screen, then click on the plus icon and navigate to the raw EEG recording option. You'll see the EEG data streamed live from each of the 4 electrodes. As a rule, smaller deflections will correspond to cleaner data, and electrodes with good quality signal will be highlighted in blue. When checking signal quality and when recording, make sure that the participant's chin remains parallel to the floor. Position the iPad in a way that doesn't require them to tilt their head forwards. You should also watch out for the artifacts. Blinking, jaw clenching, or touching anywhere near the device will introduce noise into the signal. This should be explained to the participant at the start of the session, and they should be asked to avoid those actions as much as possible. To start the experiment, go back to the main menu and select your task. Note that the experiment won't start until all 4 electrodes are receiving good quality signal. That's why the previous step was so important and why you should always check signal quality first. Eventually, the instructions will appear on the screen and will include the example stimuli for your task. The example I'm showing here is a standard 2-tone active auditory oddball where participants are asked to count the infrequent higher pitched tones. Confusingly, in the peer menu, this task is listed as the passive auditory oddball, which it is not if the participant is actively paying attention to the stimuli. At the end of the task, once the participant enters their response, simply click Done and you'll see the Save window appear on the screen. Make sure that you click Save straight away and you don't turn off the Muse or the iPad until the output is saved. Otherwise, this might trigger an error and you might not be able to access your data later. You will then be taken to the summary page containing all the information about your experiment, including the study name, the date of the recording, duration, the file size, and technical specifications of the Muse. The next thing you want to do is label the file to be able to identify it later. What I like to do is put participant ID both in the notes section and in the actual name of the file, which makes it easier to look for the file in the app. Next, you can look at the raw data by clicking on EEG. Note that this will not be very informative unless you want to analyze the data yourself outside of Peer. But if you're not doing that, you can go back to the summary page and click on N200 and P300 to view the results of the internal Peer analysis. Here, you'll find the peak parameters of the N200 and P300 components. These would be calculated for each of the 4 electrodes individually. It's important to note that no documentation is available on the specifics of this analysis, meaning that we don't actually know what happens to the raw data. We don't know how it's filtered, how the artifacts are rejected, or how the component peaks are identified. What we do know is that Peer seems to define component peaks as the most positive for the P3 and the most negative for the N2 points in the difference ERP waveform. These peaks are likely found within a certain time window, but again, these are not disclosed by the developer. With this in mind, let's explore the Peer output. At the top of the page, you'll see the peak amplitudes averaged across all 4 channels, and underneath you'll find a more detailed breakdown for each electrode individually. For example, if you're interested in the P3, you will find its peak amplitude in microvolts and peak latency in milliseconds. Peer will also display the percentage of trials excluded from the analysis due to artifacts. Note that this is the percentage of all trials and not just of target trials. Underneath, the top graph will plot the specific ERP response to target stimuli in blue and to non-targets in orange. And below that, you'll find the difference waveform created by subtracting the non-target waveform from the target waveform, showing the component peaks with the parameters reported above. Scrolling down, you'll find the exact same output for the rest of the EEG channels. Note that there is no way to export these in bulk, so if you want to use these, you'll have to manually transfer all the values into your spreadsheet. Once the recording is finished and saved, take the Muse off and press and hold the start button to turn it off. Make sure to thoroughly sanitize the Muse with cleaning wipes before putting it back into the box. Good luck with your research!